Okay, and then when you're done with that thought, go ahead and open up your hands. Hold your hands like this. Oh, good job. You guys are such a well-behaved group of students. All right, open up your hands. Sorry, I can't do it with two hands because I have a mic in one of them. All right, I'm going to throw out some bubble gum. Are you ready? Catch a bubble gum, unwrap it, put it in your mouth, chomp it up. All right, and blow a bubble. Catch a bubble. That's what we say at our school, or what my former teachers say at their school still, instead of telling children to be quiet all the time, because we have to say that a lot, right? Be quiet. So we say, catch a bubble, catch a bubble. It just sounds like a nicer way, and then we throw out some bubble gums. So good job catching a bubble and being quiet. Did anybody have one of their things that make us flip our lid, or make you flip your lid, that you wanted to share, or you care to share with us? Any volunteers? Yes. When people are late. Ooh, is that a hot button for anyone else? Is that a trigger? All right. What are some coping strategies that you've developed? Yes. Right. Yes. All right, so she's developed patience. Good. Anyone else have a hot button? Something that makes you flip your lid that you want to share? We'll just do one more. Any brave volunteers? Yes. Tattling? Yes. How many of us have that as a hot button or trigger in our classrooms? The students who love to tattle on the other children. What's a coping strategy, something you've used to reconnect your brain? If you've developed one yet, maybe that's why you're here. Awesome. Perfect. So making it that teachable moment, knowing that even though it's something that's going to push your button, we're going to utilize it as a time to teach the children when is it an appropriate time to tattle, when is it not. As far as reconnecting your brain, does anybody have any physical things that we use to reconnect our brain to kind of help you de-stress? Anybody have jogging, dancing, running? Okay. I'm a mover, in case you couldn't tell. So being in the classroom, it comes natural to me to get those kids up and moving and active. But for some of us who have a little bit more of a still spirit, sometimes we need to be aware of those students who need that active energy to kind of work on getting those emotions out. And again, we're going to talk a lot about practical strategies of ways to do that. But I think it's important for us, again, just to identify the way our brain operates, what some of our hot buttons are, because ultimately we really want to model for our students what self-control looks like, right? Can anybody think of a moment in your classroom where you maybe didn't model what self-control should look like? I think we've all had those moments because we're human, right? But there's a great quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, "What you do speaks so loudly that I can't hear what you say." So we need to really be cognizant of when we have those moments of frustration in the classroom, being aware for ourselves, take more time, spend more time thinking about what those hot buttons are later this weekend in the classroom, what triggers you to kind of disconnect that brain, and think about some coping strategies so we can really model that self-control for the students. And we'll talk about those specific strategies to do so in just a little bit. We're going to lay a little bit more foundation for teaching these social and emotional skills. And the premise really of today's presentation is this teaching pyramid. Has anyone seen this teaching pyramid before? Raise your hand if you have. Yay, I'm so glad if you have. I think this is a great model for developing social and emotional competencies in our classroom, dealing with behaviors in our classroom. This is also utilized for positive behavior support and positive guidance. We could spend probably 2 weeks talking about this pyramid and all of the different strategies we could utilize, but we're going to try and condense it and get us through that foundation so that we can talk about the third level, which is social and emotional skills teaching. As you can see, this is a research-based model for effective practices in our classroom to help children behave. Who would like to have a classroom full of children who are behaving well? Raise your hand. Great. It's not going to happen all the time for every child, but research does show that utilizing these strategies, laying a really strong foundation of positive relationships with children, colleagues, and families, creating supportive environments, and intentionally teaching social and emotional skills will help resolve behavior issues for about 90% of our children, which is a pretty good statistic. Research shows that there's going to still remain, even utilizing all these great strategies, about 10% of children who need individualized interventions. Sometimes it's outside resources. If you ever have any questions on that, you can feel free to email me, because that is, again, in and of itself, a whole nother workshop. So we're gonna talk about the function of the teaching pyramid as it relates to social and emotional skills. Today, we're gonna talk about first, laying that foundation with positive relationships with children and families is what we're gonna focus on here. This NAYC position statement says that positive relationships with children are really important. Again, the research lends itself to knowing what an important role you're playing in the lives of the children you serve. And this quote says, children develop best when they have secure, consistent relationships with responsive adults and opportunities for positive relationships with peers. Your teacher-child closeness is a factor in so much of the success of the children. So what you're doing really is changing the lives of these children. And we're going to talk about intentionally forming positive relationships with every child in your class and the families that are part of your program as well. Positive relationships are based on trust, respect, and support. They help you gain insight into your students and help provide you with an opportunity to partner with families, but they do require time and effort. Getting to know the different children and families is so important. How many of you have had a child acting out in the class for a week or so, and then you come to find out after the fact, maybe dad was out of town, or they had a new babysitter at home. These circumstances that are affecting the home affect the children in the classroom. So the more that we can invest in that really secure relationship with the children and the families and get to know them and create that open dialogue, the better able we are to serve the children and help them develop socially and emotionally. We're going to focus first on building positive relationships with the children in our classroom. A lot of these I'm sure you're already doing. I just wanted them to be reminders for us of things we can do on a daily basis to form that connection with the children. I also wanted to mention some of these strategies are going to come easier with some students than with others. We've all had children where it takes a little bit more effort to develop that relationship. Same with families, I'm sure. But we want to make sure we're investing that time and effort on our part as practitioners. So one of the easiest things we can do, it's free as well, which we love free ideas for our classroom, right? Acknowledge each child with a smile and greeting upon arrival. I think it's so important to have those children when they enter your classroom or program to know that it's going to be a great day and to know that you're there to welcome them. Can you turn to your neighbor and smile at them? Doesn't it just make you happy to see that smiling face? Smile often throughout the day. It is contagious. If you ever want to see what your demeanor looks like, I encourage you to videotape yourself throughout the day so you can see what you look like and how you're interacting. Is that scary for anyone? I'm going to watch this videotape later, and it's a little scary for me, so I can completely empathize with you. But it is contagious, so make sure we're smiling throughout the day often with the children. We also want to talk with each child as much as possible. I always tell practitioners that I think children live in a big people world. They're little people living in a big people world. And I think that's the reason why they love you as early childhood professionals, because you get that they are awesome and they're so much fun to talk to and they have the greatest conversations to share with you. So just being on their level and talking with them and acknowledging them will go a long way. And that's why they'll be drawn to you as the lovely people who are working with them each and every day. Play with the children. Get down on the ground. Play with the blocks. We'll talk about how this is a great opportunity to model social and emotional skills too. Make sure you're playing with your children. Playing with them will also help you get to know their likes and their dislikes, their strengths and their interests, which is going to be really important for figuring out where they are in that social emotional spectrum as well and where they need to go. All right. Also, with building positive relationships, invest in special one-on-one time with children. I think especially for those children who are struggling socially and emotionally, there's a quote that says, those who are the hardest to love often need it the most. And I think that's so true with our children. Sometimes they'll put up those walls and those barriers, and I'm sure we know adults like that as well, but oftentimes they're the ones that need that love and support and encouragement the most. So I know it's difficult to do because we have 12 or 18 or 24 students or 30 students in our classroom. So I always encourage teachers, when you can, especially with those key students who you think need that additional love and support, maybe take them to the break room to help you cut out the die cuts for the day or make the art projects, go get the paint from the art supply cabinet. Whenever you can, have that one-on-one time with them. And then for every child in your class, but especially for those students who are at times difficult to love, write down 5 positive things about every child in your class. And I encourage you to do that before the end of next week. That's your homework. You might not have thought you were going to leave here with homework, but your homework is to write down 5 positive things about every child, because we know that God has uniquely gifted every child in your classroom and created them in your image. But when they just bit someone and you know that you're going to have to respond to the parent and you see another child crying, it's hard to remember that, right? So this list serves as that visual aid for us to reconnect our brain and remember that every child in our classroom, although they're not good every day or making perfect choices, of course, every day, they have good abilities and good positive attributes. All right, moving on with relationships with children. It's really important to give your children ample, authentic, verbal encouragement and acknowledgement for making positive choices throughout the day. And what we mean about authentic encouragement versus generic praise is some of those empty statements that, for me, my empty statement is good job or that's awesome. I say that all the time. And I mean it. I mean good job and I mean that's awesome. But what happens is when it becomes a blanket statement, it's not identifying to the children what specifically was good about the choice they were making. And as it relates to social and emotional skills, it's really important to make that connection for them. So in order to kind of give us a script, because I need that, you, underneath your packet of PowerPoints, you have a supplemental handout packet. These things will be loaded online. We're also going to make sure you have access to lots more handouts and resources, because I'm obsessed with resources to help us in the classroom, and I couldn't print out the 100 pages that I wanted to for you, so we'll make sure everything gets uploaded. In your packet, though, you've got a list of positive relationships with children, and then on the back, families. These are just some more ideas besides the ones that we're sharing right now. And then you have a list of a checklist for skills for building positive relationships with young children. This is just kind of a good self-assessment tool for you to see in your classroom currently how you're doing with forming those relationships with the children in your class, and also areas of improvement. We're not perfect. We always have ways that we could grow, so this is just kind of a way for you to identify that. On the back of that, you have a list of starters for giving positive feedback and encouragement for effort, thinking, and problem solving. So the first one says, you did a dynamite job of solving that problem, and then identify what the problem was. Or, wow, what a fabulous job you've done of helping to clean up. So just being really specific in what you're acknowledging in the students, being encouraging. There's a couple lines for you to write your own favorites down there, and just for the sake of time, we don't have time to do that right now because we have so many fun things that we need to do and sing and play with. But over the weekend, if you want, write down some of your favorite new go-to phrases so you can make sure you're offering that authentic encouragement. A really good way to check how much you're encouraging your students too is if you hear them encouraging each other. That was one of my favorite things to do as an administrator, is walk in the classroom and hear students saying, I'm so proud of you. That is such a beautiful picture, because you knew that that was coming from their teacher and that was an encouraging environment. So again, if you want to kind of do a self-assessment, you can record yourself in your classroom so you can hear. Sometimes our intent of saying things isn't how it comes out. So I encourage you, if you have a smartphone or borrow one from a friend, to record yourself and listen to the students if you hear them encouraging each other. All right. Moving on into building positive relationships with families. Before I forget too, there are some white index cards. If at any point you have questions about any of the content we're covering, go ahead and write down your questions on those index cards, and at questions and answers at the end of our presentation, I'll answer those questions for you. So I won't take a pause at each section as we're moving through, and I apologize for that, but go ahead and write down those questions that you might have. All right, are we good so far though? Wiggly thumbs up. Are we all still here? All right, good to see. Moving on, we're gonna talk about positive relationships with families, because again, this is so foundational, because we know the biggest part of our role is partnering with parents for those children. We're not going to be with the children forever, so we really want to make sure that we have that good relationship with the parents so we can help them implement some of the strategies at home and help them grow in the ways that they can support their child's social and emotional competency. We really want to take time in the beginning of the year to build this relationship, especially again for those students who might be having at times learning difficulties or behavioral difficulties. The more that we've invested in that positive relationship with the parents before we have to address those things, the less defensive the parents are likely to be. So if you have that child in your class, for some of you who started last week, and you can already foresee into the future that you might be having a conversation with those parents sometime in the near future, make sure you give them a phone call or an email or a happy note home, and we'll talk more specifically about that, to have that first connection with those families be really positive, for them to know, because I know you love children. That's why you're in this profession, right? Is anyone here for the money? Anyone? No? So we understand that heart that you have for children, and we want to make sure that the parents understand that too. So some of the ways we can do that are back to school night. Does anybody here have back to school night at their school? Parents love back to school night because they get to spend that quality time hearing about what their child's day will be like, what you get to do. It's also a great time for you to plant those seeds about the importance of play and the importance of social and emotional skills development and calming strategies. So it's a great time for you to be able to plant those seeds with parents. Happy Notes Home. In your packet, you have a handout. For some Happy Notes Home, it looks like this. So just quick, easy ways. As an administrator, when I would get to sit in the front office and see parents come and pick up their children, when they would get to have a Happy Note Home, especially some of those families whose children weren't always the best behaved in school, to be able to have someone say something positive, it just changed their whole demeanor, and it made them so excited, and the children so proud to be able to show their parents. So that's a quick, easy thing you can do. There's also a handout for a Family of the Week to get to know your families, because you want them to feel like they're a part of your classroom community as well. So you can do a Family of the Week handout, and it's provided for you. You can just send this home and have the parents provide some information and some pictures about the family and include that in your classroom decor, and we'll take a look at some of those pictures and how to do that in just a minute. Phone calls home are great to connect with families, especially ones that you don't see maybe at drop-off or pickup time. Emails are another great way to relate to families and make sure that you're staying connected with them. Because I was a teacher not too long ago, I remember that September starts and then you blink and then it's June. It doesn't always feel that way, but sometimes it does. The hard days it doesn't feel that way, but sometimes the year just slips through our fingers, and before we know it, we've maybe had one positive conversation with a family. And it's not because we didn't try or had the best of intentions, but we are busy. So I wanted to give you guys a checklist where you could write your students' names, and then there's 10 different opportunities to have a positive interaction with that family. So you can make sure that at least once a month, if you're a September through June school, you're having a positive interaction with every family to make sure that you're really laying that foundation of building that relationship relationship with them. Other great ways that you can build relationships with families are school picnics. Any opportunity you can get them on their campus, spending time. It's a great strategy for you to model strategies for them and just build that relationship with them. Invite them to come in and volunteer in your classroom. Again, they're going to pick up some great strategies from you. Invite them to chapel if you work at a private school. Invite them to come to those performances. Parent workshops where you can talk to them specifically about social and emotional schools or skills. I know a lot of schools do book clubs as well. So maybe reading a book together as a staff and parent group. It'll help you all grow in your skills and abilities. There's also video series if you're interested in doing a parent workshop where you can do a 6-week process of a workshop with parents. And then, of course, parent newsletters. How many of you do newsletters to your families? Those are great ways to communicate what's going on in the classroom, and they can be super simple. And Google is our best friend now because we can find the cutest templates for free and easy. And if you're not computer savvy, it can look like you're the greatest graphic designer on earth because you found a free Google form for parent newsletters. So I encourage you to communicate with the parents. One of the optional or items that we're going to upload for you is going to be a getting to know you form, just to get some basic information about the families and the children, who the child lives with, what some of their strengths are. These are some family monthly projects that you can send home. So one of the teachers at my school, once a month in the beginning of the month, she'd send home a family art project, and she'd send home all the materials and encourage the parents to send those back, so that they could post them in the classroom, and it made it feel like all of the families and every child was a part of that community. So again, just really laying that foundation for establishing those social and emotional skills. So on the left, every member in the family had to trace their hand and write something they're thankful for. On the right, they did family pumpkins. It was so neat to see the uniqueness of how every family completed those projects. These are not in your PowerPoints just because the pictures don't show up great. So this entire presentation will also be uploaded on the link that David will be sending out to you. So you'll have reference to these pictures in the future too. Another teacher sent home a turkey feather for Thanksgiving, 1 feather to every family, and they had to decorate it accordingly. Here's pictures of Grandparents' Day. You can also do Daddy and Me Craft Night, Mommy and Me Craft Night. Again, any opportunity to get families on your campus so you can build those relationships and model and help them develop those skills that they need to interact well with their children as well. Another teacher did a bulletin board where she sent home a scrapbook paper, and it says, "Quilted together by God's love." Every family just sent back the scrapbook paper with pictures of their family and their child. And this stayed up all year long. So again, we knew this was a classroom community of these children and these families, and they were all a part of that classroom community together. All right, quickly, we're going to move into creating supportive environments. Are we still okay, or do we need break now, or can we get through creating supportive environments? Yes? Okay, sorry, we started a few minutes late, so you guys seem so flexible. You must be doing a really good job of connecting your brain and taking deep breaths. So adaptable. Again, we could spend an entire workshop talking about classroom environments, and I would love to come and see any of your classrooms. I'm always looking for good pictures for presentations, and I'm sure you're brilliant at your classroom designs. So again, a lot of this will be basic and probably reminders, but just so we're all on the same page about what our physical environment needs to look like to really reach the children in their social and emotional skills. Make sure our classroom is clean, neat, and orderly. We want to avoid visual clutter and overstimulation. Label where toys belong to help with the cleanup routine. That's a big thing because that's one of those social skills that we're going to want the children to participate within the group. So making sure that everything has a place so they know where to put it when it's time to clean up. Provide boundaries for activities and play. Ways that you can do this are area rugs. You can use tape, masking tape on the carpet. Ask your director if it's okay before you do that. Don't tell her I said you could. Tables, trays. Include spaces for individual play. like Daniel was mentioning, sometimes once we get our children to that spot where they can identify that they're going to flip their lid, and we're going to talk about that at the second half of this workshop, we want children to be able to have a space where they can take a break from everyone else. When it's feeling overwhelming to be in the group, some easy ways to do that. We didn't have very big classrooms at my school, so I can assure you, I can empathize with lack of space that you might have. An easy way to do that is a hula hoop, because you can carry that out to the playground with you or wherever you're going. And so wherever the hula hoop is, only one person can be in the hula hoop at a time, so you might need to get a few of them. But it's a place where they can come, and you can use some of those stress balls that you have on your table, some timers, put those in the hula hoop, let them kind of relax, take a break where they don't have to be fighting for toys or having so much stimulation from other children. So that individual space is really important when needed. And making sure we have a classroom community of learners. So we want to make sure that all children are represented in our classroom. Use their names, pictures. Children love themselves, right? They are very egocentric. So anytime that we can make the classroom feel like it's their environment and we are a team and a community, it's going to really help with that social skills component. So make sure they're all represented, and make sure that diversity is represented in your classroom as well. That's really important for the children to become culturally sensitive, and make sure that they understand that there are lots of different types of people, so make sure that's represented well. Here's a picture of a classroom where you can see different areas for table time, play time, circle time. So really pulling out your furniture from the walls if you have it pushed against the walls, so you can create those different spaces for play. One of the teachers at our school, to make sure that the children knew that they were in that classroom community, on the front door, as soon as you walked in the classroom, the very first day of school, she would take a picture of them and write their name, so you knew whose classroom it was. As they progressed throughout the school year and gained more skills, she would have them draw their own self-portrait and write their own name. So you knew whose classroom it was, they knew that they belonged there, and that it was a loving community full of friends. Any art project where you can involve the kids' names, again, kids love themselves. So this is a chicka chicka boom boom tree, so incorporating using their names all over your classroom. Moving on from that physical environment, we're going to briefly touch on schedule and routines. When you're looking at your daily schedule, make sure that you have a balance of large and small group activities. Does everyone feel like they balance large and small group activities now, at least relatively well? Let me see a thumbs up if you do. Let me see a middle thumb if you're okay at it, a thumbs down if you think you might need to adjust. All right. Make sure there's a balance of teacher-directed and child-initiated, so times when the teacher is deciding what we're doing and it's group time, but there's times when the children get to choose what they do, so working on building their own interests. Posted daily schedule, because our children, if they're in the younger 4 classrooms or lower, they might not know how to read. So we have those nice daily schedules posted for our parents that label everything, but we want to have picture daily schedules for the kids to be cognizant of those children who get anxious when they don't know what's happening next. So we want to make sure this is a nice way to do it in a pocket chart, so that way if you have to change your daily routine or schedule, you can do so easily. Does anybody have a child in their class where it's a really big deal when that changes? Raise your hand if you do now or ever have. I had a student where that was a very big deal, so he got to help me change the pictures so I could walk him through that process and what was going to change in the day. So kind of building in that individual scaffolding. Provide consistent routines. Use songs and finger plays so children know what's coming next. I encourage you as a teacher to write out a sub-plan. So let's say you weren't going to be in your classroom tomorrow. What does your classroom, well, not tomorrow, none of you are going to be in your classroom tomorrow because it's Sunday. Let's say Monday you are not going to be in your classroom. Write out your routines. How do the kids get from one place to another, so that it could go smoothly if you weren't there and the kids would know what was happening. It'll help you kind of identify where there's some areas that you need to develop those really consistent routines. It'll just help the children feel secure, again, working on that brain and emotional development for them. And then, of course, we want to plan for transitions. Who has difficulties during transitions when you're trying to move 24 4-year-olds to the playground? Anyone? It can be a difficult time for those children who are less socially and emotionally competent for sure. I'm going to upload an additional resource that David will have the link for, because again, transitions, we could spend 2 hours because I love talking about songs and games for transitions. But for the sake of today, we don't have time. We're going to talk about songs and games for social and emotional skills. But there are lots of great songs and finger plays you can use to help lay that foundation in your classroom. So we'll get an additional resource for that. Last thing we're going to talk about before break real quickly is our classroom rules. Does everyone here have classroom rules or guidelines for behavior, or who here has classroom rules or guidelines for behavior? All right, good. If not, you'll get access to these. They will also be an additional resource linked for you. When you are creating classroom rules, though, we want to state the positive. We want to tell the children what is expected of them. Have you ever told a child who's running in your classroom to stop running, and then they decide to skip in your classroom, or maybe they decide to hop in your classroom, all of which are not the exact action you were looking for? We want to make sure we're telling children the exact desired behavior that we want to see. Additionally, there's always that child who hears whatever you said not to do, and they do that, right? So we want to make sure we're telling the children, and especially when it comes to those social skills, what we want to see them do. Keep the rules simple, provide a picture cue, and then again, model the behaviors you want to see, which is sometimes hard. Is it hard to use our inside voice inside the classroom as teachers? Yes, sometimes it can be. All right, here's some classroom rules. We're kind to one another. We listen to our teacher. We use gentleness. We use our words when we need help. So again, you'll have access to those. If not, make sure that you have picture rules stated. And with our classroom rules, just like we're going to talk about with social and emotional skills, these cannot be sitting on the wall and we never address them. How many of you teach the alphabet to your children by having the alphabet posted and it just magically absorbs into their brain? Does that happen for anyone? No. We have to use songs and games and finger plays to teach them those skills, and we'll talk about that in a minute after break. But same with our classroom rules. We want to make sure that we're incorporating them intentionally in our lesson plans. I think the beginning of the school year is a great time to do that, but also throughout the school year, making sure that we're using songs and games to really make sure the children know what's expected of them. And that's going to be a huge part of creating that really good social and emotional awareness for our munchkins. We are going to quickly take a 15-minute break, and then when we come back, we're going to dive into how do we do social and emotional skills teaching. And
we hope you enjoyed this message. Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Learn more at biola.edu.